The storm came without warning. The air shifted first, a deep, strange pressure that made even the mountains groan. Then the wind screamed through the alien plains, tearing dust and ice into the night sky. The clouds above looked alive, flashing with blue fire, pulsing like the veins of a giant beast. In a shallow valley of black rock and glowing moss, an alien den lay hidden beneath the earth. Inside, the faint sound of breathing filled the darkness, soft, uneven, frightened. 6 tiny cubs huddled together in a nest of fur. Their mother, a tall feline predator with silver eyes and scars across her shoulders, stood at the entrance. Her name was Raka. To her tribe, she was a hunter. To her cubs, she was the whole world. She smelled the change in the air, ozone and death. She pressed her body against the narrow opening, trying to block the wind. The cubs whimpered. Their small tails wrapped around one another. Outside, the storm's first roar shook the valley. Lightning danced across the peaks, splitting boulders apart. The wind carried a voice, and not human, not animal. Something ancient, something angry. Raka hissed, lowering her body to cover the cubs. But then came another sound, a faint whine of metal in the distance, a burning streak in the sky. She looked up and saw fire falling from the heavens. A small human exploration ship was breaking apart as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Its metal skin peeled off in glowing shards. Inside, alarms screamed. A lone human pilot, Lyra Cade, survivor of 5 missions, fought with the controls. Her hands trembled, her oxygen warning flashing red. Mayday, Mayday, this is Explorer 9. Systems failing. Her voice was calm, but her eyes told the truth. She knew she would crash. She looked through the cockpit glass and saw only darkness and lightning. Then, impact. The ship slammed into the snowy ridge far from Raka's den. The explosion lit up the valley for miles. Raka's heart raced. Her cubs squealed, frightened by the thunder. She roared, a low rumble that shook the cave. Outside, snow turned black with smoke. The night had begun, hours passed. The storm only grew worse. Sheets of ice tore through the air. The temperature dropped so low that even the glowing moss dimmed and died. Inside the den, Raka's body shivered. She was strong, but the cold was unnatural, as if the sky itself had turned against them. She looked at her cubs. They needed warmth. They needed her. But the entrance was breaking apart. Rocks were falling, pushed by the fierce wind. She tried to reinforce it with her body, pressing against the stone. Then a blast of lightning struck the hill above. The earth split. The entrance collapsed. Raka screamed. The cubs cried. Snow poured in like a living thing. She clawed through the rubble, desperate. But when she finally broke through, half the nest was gone. The cubs had gone. Only silence remained. Only the wind answered her cries. Far above the storm-covered valley, Lyra crawled out of the wreckage. Her face was burned, her helmet cracked, and one side of her suit was torn. The cold stabbed her skin like knives. She checked the oxygen. Less than 20%. Her comms were dead. Her flare gun was gone. Her legs shook, but she forced herself to stand. Through the smoke, she saw movement. Tiny shapes running across the snow, yelping weakly. At first, she thought they were wild animals. But then she heard them, the sound of children crying. She walked closer, limping. The wind nearly pushed her back. She switched on her chest light. 6 small cubs, alien, feline, glowing with faint patterns on their fur, were trapped in a pit formed by the crash. 2 were crying. 1 wasn't moving. Lyra froze. She had read reports about these creatures. Valcor predators, dangerous adults, but intelligent, protective of their young. She could leave them. She should leave them. But something inside her, that human instinct that refuses to ignore helpless life, moved her forward. She slid down the pit, ignoring the pain in her knee. She picked up the smallest cub. Its body was ice cold, its breath shallow. "It's okay. Easy now," she whispered. Her voice shook. She had no idea if it could understand her, but tone didn't need translation. The cub opened its eyes, silver just like Raka's. The wind roared again, stronger than before. Lyra wrapped the cub in a piece of thermal cloth and looked around. The others tried to climb, but the slope was too steep. She started lifting them one by one, placing them on a flat rock. Then she noticed the footprints, massive paw prints leading toward the mountains. The mother had gone looking for them. Lyra looked at the dark ridge ahead. Lightning cracked, showing a faint shadow of a den in the distance. She exhaled. All right, I get it. You're not dying here. She strapped 2 cubs to her chest harness and carried another in her arms. The rest followed, weak but moving. Her boots sank deep into the snow. The storm blinded her. She could barely see the compass on her wrist. But she kept walking. Step by step, breath by breath, her mind screamed to stop. Her body begged for warmth, but the tiny weight of the cubs against her chest kept her alive. Meanwhile, far behind her, Raka ran through the storm like a spirit of vengeance. Her roars echoed through the canyon. Every few meters she stopped, sniffing the ground, catching traces of her children. But all she could smell was human metal, smoke, oil, blood. To her, humans were stories told by the elders, wanderers from the stars, weak but clever, selfish but brave. She had never seen one herself. Now she thought one had stolen her children. Raka raised her head to the lightning and screamed, a call of fury that split the sky. But no one answered. She kept running. Back in the storm's heart, Lyra stumbled and fell. The cubs cried out. Her oxygen meter blinked again. She tore the helmet off to breathe. The air sliced into her lungs, freezing. She coughed, almost fainted, but forced herself up. The smallest cub licked her face. The gesture was tiny, but it gave her strength. She smiled weakly. You remind me of home. Another lightning strike hit nearby. Snow burst into the air. Lyra covered the cubs with her arms. Her skin burned from the cold. When the wind calmed a little, she looked up and saw a cave ahead. A faint glow inside. Shelter, she muttered. Just a little further. Each step was agony. Her vision blurred. She reached the entrance and collapsed, dragging herself inside. It was warm, or at least not frozen. She set the cubs down and rubbed their small bodies to create friction heat. She lit a small emergency flare. The orange light filled the cave. The cubs huddled close to her, trembling. Lyra leaned against the wall, chest heaving. You made it, she whispered. You're safe. Outside, the storm screamed louder, as if angry that she had survived. Miles away, the alien tribe gathered on the cliff, watching the storm consume the valley. The elder, a horned creature with eyes like molten stone, murmured, No one returns from the night storm, not even Raka. But far below, Raka was still fighting. She pushed through the snow, blood dripping from her claws, her fur heavy with ice. She refused to stop. She refused to believe her cubs were gone. Every instinct told her to turn back. But a mother's heart does not listen to logic. It listens only to the cries of her children, and she could still feel them faintly somewhere in the wind. Lyra fed the cubs small pieces of emergency rations, softened protein gels. They licked it, confused, then started eating. She smiled again. Good job. Keep going. She looked at her communicator. No signal. She tried to contact her ship, but the transmitter was fried. The storm was blocking everything. Her hands trembled. The oxygen tank read 5%. Just hold out till morning, she told herself. The cubs had stopped crying. One of them climbed onto her lap, curling against her chest. Another bit playfully at her glove. She laughed quietly, then winced at the pain in her ribs. Don't worry, I'm okay. I promise you I'll get you home. She didn't even know if their mother was alive, but she had to try. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, a fragile warmth grew between species, between hearts that didn't need words to understand each other. Hours later, as exhaustion took her, Lyra heard something outside and a roar, low and deep. Echoing through the cave walls, the cubs froze. Their ears twitched. Then they started crying again, not in fear but in recognition. Lyra's eyes widened. That sound? She stood up, staggering toward the entrance. She saw nothing, only blinding snow and flickers of lightning. But the roar came again, closer this time. She realized it wasn't the storm. It was a mother calling for her children. Lyra's breath caught. She looked at the cubs, then at the storm, and whispered, She's out there. Her body wanted rest, but her heart, that human, stubborn heart, refused to stay. She wrapped the cubs in a thermal sheet, secured them in a bundle, and stepped into the storm once more. The cold hit her like a hammer. Snow clawed at her face. She bent forward, one step at a time. The cubs whimpered. She whispered softly, Don't be scared. I got you. I got all of you. Above, lightning struck again, lighting the valley like day. For a split second, she saw her own reflection in the ice. A lone human figure. walking through hell carrying 6 small lives. Then darkness swallowed her again. At the same moment, Raka climbed the opposite ridge. Through the snow she caught a scent, her cubs mixed with human sweat and metal. Her eyes widened. She growled, ready to kill whoever had taken them. But beneath the rage she also smelled something else. Warmth. Protection. The scent of someone who had fought the storm, not against her children, but for them. The storm did not rest. It screamed across the frozen valley, shaking the earth with every gust. The night had turned into an endless blur of snow and thunder. Even the mountains bowed under the weight of its fury. But through that storm, a light moved. A faint trembling glow. It was Lyra Cade, stumbling forward with 6 alien cubs wrapped in cloth and instinct. Her face was pale. Her lips were cracked. Her oxygen mask had frozen over, long since useless. Every breath burned like fire in her chest, yet she refused to stop. She had lost her team. She had lost her ship. She had lost her voice screaming for help through a dead radio. But she would not lose these small lives. She pressed the smallest cub closer to her chest. Its fur was faintly glowing, threads of blue light pulsing under her jacket. It reminded her of bioluminescent corals from Earth's deep oceans, fragile, beautiful, and so easily extinguished. The cub whimpered. She whispered, "I know. It hurts just a little longer. We'll find her. I promise." The promise wasn't for the cubs, and it was for herself. Far behind her, hidden by the storm, Rahaka, the alien mother, followed the scent. Each breath of wind brought her fragments of memory, the warmth of her den, the soft purr of her young, the way they crawled on her back to play. And now all of that was gone. She ran on 4 limbs, her muscles trembling from exhaustion, her claws bleeding. The snow clung to her fur like chains. Every few steps she paused to listen. The storm growled back, mocking her. Then she heard it, faint, broken, but real. A cub's cry. Her ears twitched. Her eyes glowed gold in the dark. She ran faster. The sound came from far ahead, near the ridge where the human walked. Raka did not yet know who this strange creature was, only that someone else was touching her children. And that meant one thing. That being would die. Lyra's boots sank deep into the snow. Her legs ached like stone. She stopped to catch her breath near a half-buried rock formation. It looked like a black claw emerging from the ice. She set the cubs down gently under its shelter. They whimpered and curled together, their bodies forming a small circle of warmth. Lyra reached into her belt pouch and took out a thermal stick, her last one. She cracked it open. A soft orange light filled the tiny space. The cub's eyes reflected the glow. For a moment, she forgot the cold. She forgot the pain. She just stared at life. Strange alien life. One cub tried to stand. It fell on its belly and squeaked angrily. Lyra smiled. "That's it, fighter. You'll grow up to be trouble, huh?" The cub looked up at her and made a soft clicking sound, almost like laughter. She chuckled weakly. "Yeah, I'll take that as a yes." She reached out to check their breathing. One of the smallest wasn't doing well. Its body was too cold. Lyra took it in her hands and pressed it close to her chest. She rubbed gently, whispering nonsense words, things she used to say to her niece back home. "Hey now, easy little one. You're not giving up." Not yet. Minutes passed. Then the cub's chest moved again, slow but steady. Relief filled her eyes. But so did tears. She leaned against the rock, staring at the storm. Somewhere out there she knew was their mother. And maybe, if luck hadn't frozen to death yet, her ship's signal beacon might still be working. She tapped her wristband, trying again. Explorer 9. Anyone reading this? I found local life forms, juveniles. Requesting evac static, only static. The storm swallowed her words, then something new. A low vibration beneath her boots. The ground trembled. Snow shifted. She froze. What the hell? A shadow moved beyond the veil of white. Huge, 4-legged, crawling slowly uphill. It wasn't the mother. It was something else. The cubs felt it too. They went silent. Even their breathing stopped. Lyra turned off her thermal light. She crouched low, eyes scanning the storm. Then she saw it. A creature as tall as 2 humans, covered in white fur and armor like scales. Its mouth split into 3 parts dripping frost. Its eyes glowed a dull red. It was sniffing the air, following scent trails. It wasn't hunting her. It was hunting the cubs. Lyra's pulse spiked. She pulled her flare gun from her side. Only one shot left. She looked at the cubs, small, helpless, unaware of how close death was. Then she looked at the creature, slow, deliberate, cruel. "All right," she whispered. "We're not dying here. Not tonight." She picked up the cub bundle, pressed it tight against her chest, and began to move sideways, keeping the rock between her and the predator. Every step had to be silent. The wind helped. It howled loud enough to hide her movement. But then one cub squeaked. Just once. The creature's head snapped toward the sound. Its nostrils flared. It started moving faster. Lyra's breath caught. She ducked behind another rock, heart hammering. The creature sniffed the air, coming closer, closer. She aimed her flare gun. Her hand trembled. "Come on, come on." When the creature's shadow loomed over the edge, she fired. The red flare exploded into the sky, painting the storm crimson. The creature roared, blinded, stumbled back. The light burned its eyes. Lyra didn't wait. She ran, snow sprayed in every direction. The wind tore at her jacket. She could hear the beast behind her, growling, recovering fast. She ran downhill, slipping, clutching the cubs. The flare still burned above, painting everything in shades of blood. At the bottom of the ridge, she found a narrow crack in the ice. A cave. She dove inside just as the creature lunged from behind. Its claws missed her by inches. She crawled deeper, panting, pressing the cubs to her chest. The creature roared outside, slamming its claws against the frozen entrance. The ground shook. Snow rained down from above. Lyra screamed in silence, too afraid to make a sound. The cubs huddled under her arms. She whispered, "Shh, it's okay. It's okay. Stay still." After a few endless minutes, the sound stopped. The scratching faded. The roars grew distant. The monster had moved on. Lyra didn't move for a long time. She just sat there, breathing hard, tears frozen on her cheeks. When she finally dared to look outside again, the storm had changed. The wind was calmer, the light softer. The flare had burned out, but its smoke still drifted through the air like a red ghost. Far above, Raka saw that red light. She froze. Her fur bristled. She had seen that kind of light before, in the sky when the human's ship fell. Her heart pounded. The light was a signal. Maybe her children were there. She climbed the ridge, claws cutting through ice. Her breath came in sharp bursts. She could smell them now, faint but real. Her cubs and something else, something alive, something alien. She followed the scent toward the fading smoke. Back in the cave, Lyra sat against the wall, shaking. The cubs had fallen asleep, piled on top of one another. Their warmth kept her alive. She stared at them, so small, so unaware of what had happened. Her throat burned. "You little idiots," she whispered. "You're gonna kill me, you know that?" She laughed softly. The sound echoed strangely in the ice. Then she closed her eyes, just for a second. She saw flashes of her own past. A burning ship, her crew screaming, the silence after the explosion. The guilt she carried. The loneliness that had eaten her alive for months in space. And now, here she was, surrounded by alien children who needed her. It felt like the universe had finally given her a reason to keep fighting. She leaned her head back and whispered, "All right, universe, I'll play your game." Outside, the snow began to clear. For the first time in days, the twin moons of the planet broke through the clouds. Their light shimmered over the white plains, cold, beautiful, endless. Raka reached the lower ridge. She saw footprints, and small and round like her cubs. And beside them, human footprints. Her eyes narrowed. She crouched low, sniffing the ground. Her tail flicked once. The human was close. But before she could move, a distant howl echoed from the mountains. The same kind of creature that had hunted Lyra. It was heading in the same direction. Raka's rage burned. She would not lose her young to beasts or storms or humans. She charged forward. Lyra woke to a sound, the crunch of snow outside the cave. Her instincts screamed danger. She pulled the cubs close and turned off her wrist light. The sound came closer, slow, deliberate, heavier than before. She held her breath. Then she saw it. A shape in the entrance, large, muscular, moving with grace. Not like the predator before. Its eyes glowed silver, not red. Lyra froze. The cub stirred. Then something strange happened. The smallest cub wriggled free and walked toward the entrance, crying softly. "Wait," Lyra whispered, reaching out. But it was too late. The figure in the doorway growled low, not in anger but in recognition. Raka stepped into the light. The cub cried louder, wobbling toward her. Raka's eyes widened. She lowered her head, sniffing the air. It was real. Her child was alive. Her gaze shifted to Lyra, the human kneeling in the corner, shaking one arm around the remaining cubs. For a moment the cave held its breath. Human and alien, two predators, two mothers in spirit, stared at each other across a line of firelight and fear. Raka roared, not a warning, but a demand. Lyra raised her hands slowly. "Easy, I'm not your enemy," she said softly, though she knew the alien couldn't understand. But tone needed no translation. She pointed to the cubs in her arms. "I saved them, yours safe." The first light of morning crept through the storm clouds like shy fingers, turning the snow from black to blue. The wind had finally slowed and the planet seemed to breathe again. Silence ruled the valley, a silence so deep it felt alive. Inside the cave, Lyra Cade opened her eyes to the faint sound of purring. For a heartbeat she forgot where she was. Then she saw them. 6 cubs pressed against her legs and the huge silver-eyed mother lying near the entrance, half blocking the wind. For the first time since the crash, Lyra felt safe. Her throat was dry, her muscles stiff, but her heart was calm. She watched the cubs tumble and climb over her boots, curious and full of energy again. The mother Raka turned her head slightly, one eye half open, studying her. There was no anger in that look now. Only tired curiosity. Lyra whispered, "Morning, big girl." Raka blinked once, slowly, like a queen who had decided to tolerate a guest. Lyra tried to move her numb fingers. Her suit heater had died hours ago. She checked her wristband. The oxygen level was low, but she could still last a few more hours. She needed to find parts from the wreck to repair her beacon, or she'd die here when the next storm came. She looked at Raka. "I have to go out," she said quietly, though she knew the alien couldn't understand. "If I don't, we all freeze next time." Raka tilted her head, ears twitching at the sound of her voice. Lyra took that as permission, or maybe hope. She pulled on her broken helmet and stepped outside. The valley looked unrecognizable. Mountains of snow buried half the landscape. The air shimmered with mist. Far away, the wreck of her ship lay twisted on a ridge, smoke rising faintly from it like the last breath of a dying animal. It was at least 2 kilometers away. She sighed. "All right, Cade, let's make a miracle." She began walking, each step sinking deep. The cold bit into her skin like teeth, but she kept moving. Inside the cave, Raka watched her go. Her cubs whimpered, wanting to follow, but the mother held them back with her tail. She sniffed the air. The human scent was strange. Warm, stubborn. For some reason she did not understand. Raka felt something she hadn't felt since the war seasons of her youth. Respect. The wind picked up again as Lyra climbed toward the wreck. The world stretched endlessly around her, white upon white except for the faint glow of alien moss scattered beneath the ice. She moved carefully. The surface was fragile, and beneath it ran rivers of frozen water that could collapse at any moment. Halfway there, she heard something, a faint click, then another. Her heart skipped. She turned slowly, scanning the horizon. Nothing, only fog. Then, movement. Something crawled along the snowbank to her left. She drew her sidearm. The safety light flickered weakly. Another sound came, sharper this time, like glass cracking. She aimed. And then, the ice beneath her feet gave way. Lyra screamed as she plunged down into darkness. She hit hard, the air leaving her lungs. For several seconds she lay there stunned. The world above was a white circle of light far away. Her flashlight flickered, then steadied. She was inside an ice cavern, as wide, cold, and glowing faintly blue. Strange shapes hung from the ceiling like frozen ribs. Steam rose from cracks in the ground, and then she heard it. A sound she would never forget. Crying. Not human. Not the cubs. Something older. She lifted the light slowly. In the center of the cavern stood a creature thin and tall, with crystal skin and empty eyes. It was half buried in the ice, trapped in time. The sound came from inside its chest, moan like a heartbeat echoing through water. Lyra stepped closer, fascinated. The body was ancient, maybe thousands of years old. Around it, she saw carvings etched into the ice. Symbols, drawings, circles of alien script. She whispered, "A shrine." She realized this wasn't just a random cave. It was sacred ground. She approached carefully, her light brushing over one carving after another. Images of storms, beasts, and stars falling from the sky. In the center was a figure with 2 eyes, 2 arms, human-shaped. Her breath caught. Humans here? Her mind raced. Maybe this planet had seen humans long before her crash. Maybe the storm wasn't natural. Maybe it was a cycle, a ritual of the planet itself. She reached out to touch the symbol, and the ice cracked. The sound exploded through the cavern. The glowing figure shuddered once as if waking. A deep vibration filled the air. Lyra stumbled back. No, no, no. The ice around the figure broke apart. A pulse of light rushed outward, blinding her. Then silence. When she opened her eyes again, the figure was gone, vanished like smoke. Only the echo of that heartbeat remained, fading slowly into the cold. Above ground, Raka's ears twitched. She had felt it too, a tremor beneath her paws like the voice of the ancestors calling from the ice. The cubs whimpered and pressed against her. Something old had awakened. Something she did not understand. She stood, growled softly, and began to track the human scent again. In the cavern, Lyra struggled to climb. Her rope line had snapped, so she drove her gloves into the ice wall inch by inch. Her arms burned, her breath misted. Every few seconds, strange whispers echoed around her, like words spoken backward. She ignored them. She just needed to get out. After what felt like hours, she pulled herself over the edge, collapsing in the snow. The light above had changed, darker now, almost green. She looked toward the wreck. It was closer than before. She forced herself up and started walking again. When she reached the ship, her heart sank. The hull was crushed, the cockpit buried. But she saw what she needed. The emergency beacon, half buried in ice. She knelt, brushed off the frost, and opened the panel. Circuits were fried. Still, maybe she could rewire it manually. She pulled out her toolkit and started working. Minutes passed. Then, a shadow moved behind her. Lyra froze. A low growl rolled through the air. Not the wind. Not Raka. She turned slowly. A creature crawled over the ridge. The same kind she had faced last night, but bigger, scarred, and angry. Its breath came out in clouds of mist. Its eyes burned red. Not again, she muttered. She raised her gun. The barrel shook in her frozen hands. The beast roared and charged. Lyra fired. The blast hit its shoulder, but it barely slowed. She dove aside as claws slashed the snow where she had been standing. The beacon fell from her hand, sliding across the ice. The creature lunged again. Lyra rolled, kicked, fired once more. The shot hit its chest. It screamed but didn't stop. She scrambled backward, and then her foot hit nothing. She had reached the edge of another drop. Behind her, endless ice. In front, death. Her brain screamed to run, but her legs refused. She braced herself, whispering, "Come on, then." The beast jumped, and from the sky, something else came down with it. A blur of silver and muscle crashed into the creature mid-air. "Raka!" She roared so loudly the ice itself cracked. The 2 predators tumbled across the ground, claws slashing, snow flying. Lyra could only stare, frozen in shock. Raka's speed was terrifying. She bit into the creature's neck, twisted, dodged, struck again. The larger beast tried to throw her off, but she was faster, meaner, fueled by something deeper. A mother's rage. The fight was brutal and silent except for the sound of breaking bones. Finally, Reka pinned it down and crushed its skull with one final bite. Then she turned to Lyra. Her fur dripped red against the white snow. Her chest heaved. Lyra raised her hand slowly. "Hey, easy. You saved me again, huh?" Raka tilted her head, breathing hard. She could smell the human's fear for him, but also something else, gratitude. She stepped closer. The 2 locked eyes, and then they both heard it, a deep rumble beneath their feet. The ground split open. The ice beneath them collapsed, dragging the bodies into the newly opened cavern below, the same one Lyra had fallen into earlier. They landed hard. The light flared again, blue and white. The echoes returned. Voices, chants, Words older than either species. Raka growled, baring her teeth. Lyra covered her ears. The air itself seemed to vibrate. From the ice walls, faint figures shimmered. Humanoid shapes transparent, walking slowly in circles. Lyra whispered, "The echoes. They're alive." Raka hissed, backing toward the cubs' scent far above. She didn't understand, but she could feel danger. The figures turned their heads toward Lyra. One reached out a glowing hand. She stepped back. "No, stay away." But curiosity won. She touched the light. A flash. Images burned into her mind. Storms. Ships. Humans standing beside creatures like Raka. A world half ice, half flame. And one sentence echoing in her thoughts. "The bond between hearts will save the storms." Then it was gone. She gasped. Collapsing to her knees, Raka ran to her. Nudged her shoulder, growling softly, as if saying, "Get up." "Small one." Lyra blinked, disoriented but alive. The glowing figures faded back into the ice, leaving only silence. She looked up at Raka, smiling weakly. "Guess the planet's trying to talk to us."